for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's a certified high performance coach, no other than Miss Rosie Zilinskas.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Miss Rosie, and thank you so much for being part on Book 101 review. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am in the Chicagoland area, southwest suburb of Chicago. I'm married. I have two kids. They're 24 and 26. And I am a certified high performance coach. I help women in the corporate world that feel that they are not being recognized. And what we do is we provide a proven roadmap for women to claim that recognition so they can step into leadership with confidence. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Miss Rosie Zilinskas, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world as well as your wisdom. And let's talk about the real world leadership journey, focusing on transforming adversity into actionable leadership tools of accountability, self awareness, and team growth. Defining toxic environment. What is specific dynamic characterize the toxic personal environment you escape, and how did you survive the forge your leadership?
Yeah, a toxic environment, just so that everybody understands, it's just leadership that they're really not aware or they really don't know how to lead a team. So in the corporate world, we have senior leaders. They are making or they are putting a lot of the responsibility into that middle management to develop people that are actually reporting to them, and a lot of times that becomes toxic, not because people are trying to be mean, but because they don't have, number one, the time, and they don't have the education to develop individuals and help them move up the corporate ladder. So, but it also has to do with having emotional intelligence. Nowadays, corporations are really trying to see the person as a whole, but a lot of corporations still are not uh, allowing the person or seeing the person as a human being. They still see us as cogs, as things to actually come and do the work. But the fact of the matter is that we're all human beings and we're all trying to do the best job that we can. So in order for corporations to, number one, retain good talent and hire good talent, they have to start educating themselves on being emotionally intelligent so that they can relate to people and have candid conversations in a very uh, integral way, in a very respectful way, because there's a lot of lack of respect in the corporate, I mean, in a lot of businesses. But toxicity is prevalent when there is no time or money investment into the staff. So I will um, also say that it is so important to have programs that are specific for women, because they already start behind the eight ball for men just by being women. So I'll leave it at that.
What was the pivotal moment that made you realize you needed to radically shift your environment and your approach to leadership?
Um, I think it was when I stepped into management, and I've always been interested in personal development, and I actually started in 2007. I went through a really bad divorce and I started my personal development journey in 2007. In 2012, I stepped into a leadership role. And that's when I realized that I myself needed to continue to advance and evolve and educate myself. So I'm an avid podcast consumer, self help books. I try to read about emotional intelligence, neuroplasticity, confidence, all those things. So becoming a manager helped me be a better person and also a better parent for my young kids at that time.
Very well said, Miss Rosie. Beautifully articulated. How did the survival skills you develop in the toxic space translate when you first step into executive leadership?
Well, I think one of the things that I noticed right away was that, again, we weren't dedicating any specific training for younger women that were coming from college specifically. They were graduating and we were hiring them as full time employees. And one of the things that I noticed is that the younger men, they were advocating for themselves very naturally, and the young women really weren't speaking out. They weren't asking questions, they weren't answering questions even in the onboarding process. And this isn't necessarily related to toxicity, but it definitely has to do with us being, as managers, as leaders, being cognizant that there's two different ways that men and women are being socialized, and we have to help the females come out of their shell, so to speak, so that they can have the ability to start advocating for themselves. And I don't want to necessarily say that we have to give them permission, but it's more we have to teach them the awareness that they actually have to take action to ask for what they need, to maybe say, no, sorry, I can't do that. It's too much, or, whatever the situation is. But it's definitely learning to understand and meet where the employees are at any given stage of their career, and figure out how you as a manager can help them along the way.
Miss Rosie, how do you cultivate psychological safety while enforcing accountability across teams and share a practical tool?
Yeah, psychological safety is a tool where you as a manager need to become aware how you can speak to each of your employees and make them feel like they belong. When we talk about psychological safety, when I walk in the doors of my work, and for example, I'm 100% Mexican, if I walked in and people didn't like me being Mexican or like me being a woman, right off the bat, I would not feel safe in that office environment. So the leadership needs to make sure that each person feels like they can be themselves in the space whenever they are. And the more people feel safe, like they belong, then they're not going to have to worry about it. All of those thoughts, feelings, or ideas, they're not going to take space up in their head, and they're going to be able to focus on the work that they need to, that they were hired to do, without worrying about, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? Or, am I going to be attacked, chastised, whatever the situation is at work today. So, those are a few things as far as how leaders can really make sure that each person feels like they belong, that they're accepted, and it's through conversation. So it might be where a leader might have to have a conversation with other individuals so that they are accepting of everybody, and everybody deserves the same love, respect, and acceptance as everybody else.
Again, Miss Rosie, beautifully articulated. Very well said.
Yeah.
What's one non negotiable daily practice you use to maintain emotional stability amid chaos?
Oh, so there's two things I do. I meditate. Meditation is really pivotal in maintaining your mental health. And, people always think like I have to sit there in a position for, 30 minutes. But with my clients, we can do a meditation as quickly as 2 minutes. And all the person or my client does is they say the word release for 2 minutes, and that is considered meditation. So it can be very simple and very easy. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I work out. And the days that for whatever reason I don't have time to work out, I can feel the difference in how my psyche is, how my emotional being is, because when I do my meditation and when I work out, and I'm ready for the day, I feel like I've already won the day, and then I can go into my work without having to stress about, doing those two things. But for me, meditation is pretty huge. So yeah.
Meditation indeed. People, we're encouraging you to meditate. It will help you a lot. When is it strategic for leaders to share their past struggles like yours to inspire teams again?
Well, I think it's pretty I think anytime that you're a leader, you would have already had struggles in your career. And whenever you have conversations with your team, or maybe a one on one performance appraisal, and you're talking to somebody that's struggling, sharing an example of how you struggled in your career and what you did about it makes you vulnerable to the person that you're talking to. And I actually think that it also uh, gets that respect that you may not be looking for respect, but if I'm sharing and I'm being vulnerable, then people can feel like they can relate to me and they respect me. So, uh, obviously, in the corporate world or in the business, you're not always going to be able to divulge everything. So, when I had a team, I always would say, well, I can tell you this, or I'm not able to share that information. But being as transparent as possible, being as vulnerable as possible, and just understanding that these are human beings and people that you're leading. And a lot of times people would introduce me to somebody they knew, and they're like, this is my boss. And I'd always say, I'm not their boss, I'm their coworker. I just have a different title. So treating people with kindness and respect is key.
Definitely, that is the key, people. Key to success. Miss Rosie, how do you help leaders rebuild trust in teams scared by past toxicity?
A lot of conversation, a lot of communication. Without the conversation and just letting them know, it kind of again goes back to trust. If they can't trust you, they're not going to be able to be themselves. So the more you are able to show them the way, give them examples, maybe help them with a mentor if they're struggling, or if they're trying to advance, pair them up with somebody that they can really relate to, but just being there for the person. One of the things that I did anytime someone would come into my office, my desk was facing the wall, so they would come in and I would physically turn my body to face the person, just so that they knew that I was paying attention to them. And like anything, people just want to know that they're being seen and recognized as a person. So those are a few things that come to mind.
Miss Rosie, as a certified high performance coach, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short term goals are to get my membership up and running. I have a membership, it's about a year old, and it is up and running, but to grow my membership, that's my short term goal. My long term goal is to be able to help women eradicate that gender gap in the corporate world. And by golly gee, I am bound and determined to help make a difference with that, because we absolutely need more women to be leaders, to be comfortable stepping into leadership. And with my high performance coaching, I'm doing that on a day to day basis.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Rosie, and looking forward for more and more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a certified high performance coach?
Yeah, certified high performance coaching is amazing. They can always go to certified high performance coaching comes from Brendan Burchard. He's one of the most world renowned motivational speakers, and it's a great investment. It's something that they can look into just by going to the Brendan Burchard website. But it was one of the best things that I have done because when I coach people, I see the transformation. So I guess the very first thing is reflect on, is coaching really the right thing for them? Because you have to want to help people in order for you to become a coach. So that's what I would say about that.
Thank you for your advice, Miss Rosie. And can you recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Yes. The book that I would highly recommend is called Worthy by Jamie Kernlima. And I actually have a copy here. So, Worthy by Jamie Kernlima. This is an amazing book because it shows you the difference between self confidence and self worth. And so, self confidence, she says, is driven more from external sources, and self worth are driven from internal sources. So a lot of times so I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I had a problem, I have three sisters, I have a brother, two parents. I would call each of them, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I would call my best friends, I would call different people, and I would gather all the information. Then once I gathered all the information, then I would make my decision about the problem that I had. Nowadays, I no longer have to do that because I rely on, what do I think about that? What do I feel about that? So I sit, I reflect in my meditation, and then I take an action based on what situation I'm dealing with. So really understanding the difference between those two things is very important. And Jamie does this great analogy on self-worth and self-confidence. And so what she says is, think of a house, and the house, it could be where maybe someone throws a rock through the window. Well, you have to go and patch it up, and it's what you see externally, and that's your self confidence. But your self worth is the foundation of the house underneath the ground that you don't necessarily see on a day to day basis. So that's a really good visual explanation of the difference between self worth and self confidence. And you need to always be working on your self worth, because that's what you think about yourself and what you feel about yourself. So, that is a fantastic book.
Fantastic book indeed, and highly recommended. People, please do read it. Miss Rosie, what is the most poisonous leadership behavior you aim to eradicate based on your past?
I would think the most poisonous leadership behavior is that leaders know it all, that managers know it all. When the fact of the matter is that they're human beings, they don't necessarily have all the answers, and it's okay to admit when you don't know something. So as a manager, people would come to me and they would ask me a question. I'm like, you know what? I really don't know the answer, so let me find out. So, but pretending that you know all the answers, to me, that's quite poisonous, because number one, you don't come across as credible, and then number two, you think you're almighty, that you know all the answers, and that's just not realistic in any place in the world.
Indeed, not realistic, people. So, how do you track the human impact of leadership growth, like psychological and safety and creativity?
Yeah, I think the way I would track that is by seeing how your team stays at the company. So a lot of times you can track the development of people just by the retention. If people stay long term at your company, then more than likely you're doing a pretty good job. But if you see people either leaving a specific team, a specific manager, or a company, then there's something wrong with the leadership at some point along the development of this individual. So it's really important to track that from the retention and also the succession, like how well are you developing your individual so that they can continue to step into more senior roles, and they can step in to those roles with a lot of knowledge and confidence. So those are the couple of ways that I would say you can track that.
What leadership principle would you whisper to yourself on day one of your escape journey?
Oh gosh, I would say that it is so important to speak up and not stay quiet whenever you have a question or whenever you have a problem, to go and talk to your manager, go and talk to your peers, other leaders, because when you're struggling with something and you don't have anybody to talk to at work, that's a huge struggle. So that's what I would say.
Miss Rosie, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review for sure it's fifth season, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 and in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and law 101 and uh movie 101 in its fourth season, love letters in third season, and music 101 in its fourth season as well. And my baby podcast, mental health 101, science 101, and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Rosie, when leaders transform using your tools, what's the number one change you see in their team's culture within 90 days?
Uh, Definitely the way people feel about themselves, because whenever we're working together, we're peeling back the onion. And the other thing is, I'm also a certified Colby consultant. So with the Colby, we're able to showcase the strengths of each individual, and teams can collaborate with each other much better. So those are the couple of results that people get working with me.
Miss Rosie, can you expound this phrase to your website? It's time to rebuild the thriving career you deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times women wait to apply for a position until they have 100% of the skills that are on the job description. And generally, historically, men apply for positions having 50, 60% of the skills on that job description. So a lot of times we as women, we hold ourselves back from the career that we deserve. And one of the easiest ways to stop holding yourself back is, whenever you see a job that you're interested in, even if you don't have all the skills, apply anyway. Don't be the person that discounts yourself. Let somebody else discount the fact that you don't qualify for that position. But if you look at a job description and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have all the skills, they're never going to hire me. Of course they're never going to hire you, because you don't even try to apply for that position. So that's one of the easiest ways to explain that women hold themselves back by not applying for that job that they're searching for.
Miss Rosie Zilinskas, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, to support your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me on nowomanleftbehind.com so they can uh, learn about my membership and the coaching that I do right on the website. So thank you so much, Daniel. This was really fun.
Yes, people, let's support me, Rosie Zilinskas, because if you support her more and more empowering episodes for the podcast itself, more and more empowering coaching, and for sure, more empowering advocacy to come. Miss Rosie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Modicon people, see you soon.